Hey guys, how's it going? So first thing we're going to talk about today is linear attributes. That's the point of today's lesson. A few things to discuss. First of all, in order to know about linear attributes, we still need to remember how to graph lines from back in the day. So remember y equals mx plus b. M represented our slope, which will have a new name today. We're going to call that rate of change, fun facts. And b is your y-intercept. Remember that when we graph, we plot the y-intercept first, and then we use that point, we use the slope to find the second point. So for example, y equals 3x minus 1. Well, if you look at y equals mx plus b, my plus b is minus 1. And that's our y-intercept. So negative 1 on the y-axis is our y-intercept. Then we use our slope to find the second point. Our slope is 3, but remember as a fraction that would be 3 over 1. And slope can be written as rise over run. So I'm going to rise 3 and run 1. Rise could be, if it's positive, it's up. If it's negative, it's down. And run is always to the right. So I'm going to rise 3 and then go to the right 1. So from my point, I'm going to rise up 1, 2, 3, and go to the right 1. So 1, 2, 3 over 1. And there's my line. Okay, so today I'm going to refresh your memory on weird graphs that we haven't graphed a whole lot of, and we're going to discuss how that works. For example, if you had an equation such as y equals 4, or one like x equals negative 2. These are the two that confuse people the most because they're weird equations and they actually can't be graphed in a calculator very easily. And also the slope gets confusing. So just to recap, here's the easiest way to graph these. I actually make 2 points. And I just say y will always be 4. So remember, these are x's and y's. So I'm going to make my y's 4. I can put any number in for x, like 1 and 2. And check that out. All I have to do is plot those points. 1, 4 is here. And then 2, 4 is here. So I know which way this line goes. It's one of those weird ones that goes perfectly horizontal. And if you remember, guys, the slope of this line, remember, if you can walk on it, it does have a slope. It's just it doesn't go up or down, so the slope is 0. Now, this one, your equation is x equals negative 2. Again, I struggle remembering them, so what I do, again, is make 2 points, like this. And what do I know about these points? Well, my x is always going to be negative 2. I can make up anything for my y's. I'm just going to put 1 and 2 in. And I'm going to plot those points. So negative 2, 1 is here. And negative 2, 2, it's negative 2, positive 2. There it is. So I now know which way this line goes. It is a line that goes perfectly vertical. Remember, these are horizontal, like the horizon, and this is vertical. So at this point, I already know what my slope is. I can walk on this one, but I cannot walk on a line that goes perfectly up and down. Therefore, our slope is undefined. So common misconceptions between those two, I wanted to cover that. All right, so the key part of today is called linear attributes. Now, there's some vocab to learn from this because some questions can be tricky. For example, we should know what an x-intercept is. It will go by 2 other names for the rest of this school year. The x-intercept could also be called a 0 or a root. So if you ever see a math question it's like, hey, can you find the roots of the function? You're like, well, what's a root? Now you know what it is. A root or a 0, I forgot one. Also a solution. They ask you, what are these solutions? All of these 3 or 4 things now. You have an x-intercept, zeros, roots, and solutions. All of those mean the same thing. Where's the x-intercept? And an x-intercept is where a graph crosses the x-axis. For example, our first graph. This spot right here would be our x-intercept, that little spot right in there. Okay. Now, you can find it by making y equal to 0 and solving for x. So for example, if I gave you, I'm just going to do a simple equation, y equals x plus 2. If I wanted to know where my x-intercept was, I can make y equal to 0. So 0 equals x plus 2, right? Remember we said we made y 0. So my final answer, solve for x. Well, subtract 2 from both sides. X equals 0 minus 2, which is negative 2. And if you graph this equation I just gave you, your x-intercept would be at negative 2, 0. All right, next. And fun fact, on an XY chart, you always know if it's your x-intercept if you have a number and the y is 0. Now, the y-intercept is the exact opposite. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. Remember, we call that b, y equals mx plus b. So, for example, this one was exactly right here. And you'll notice that it crossed exactly at negative 1. So our y-intercept was at 0, negative 1 in this one example. 0, negative 1 is the y-intercept for that problem. And as I said, you can solve it by making, you can solve this by making x equal to 0 so you can solve for y. So if I make let me go to our equation. If I made my x 0, what is 3 times 0? Oop, I'm off the page. What is 3 times 0? Well, that's 0 minus 1 is minus 1. And notice those points are exactly the same. All right. The next thing we're going to discuss is the slope. Now you're going to notice that slope has a new vocab word to go with that. The slope is also called the rate of change. If you see any of these, they can be used interchangeably. So if I wanted to make a really mean test, I could say, hey, I need you to find the roots of this function and also find the rate of change. And you're like, well, I'm like scratching my head, like, what is that stuff? So you'd be finding the x-intercepts and the slope. All right, so the slope is just the steepness of a line. Remember, the line can fluctuate like this. It could be horizontal all the way, negatives and positives, and then it goes straight up, and that's undefined as we saw in that example. So slope is just how steep a line is. And we have different ways of finding slope. Usually on a graph, we use rise over run. Usually on an XY chart, we use the change of the y's over the change of the x's. And if you struggle with this, remember we do have a video over slope that I provided to you a while back and last week, and it couldn't refresh your memory. We also use this one if we're given 2 points. Most people are familiar with this, and you get this formula on your STAR test. They actually give it to you. All right. So we're going to do a couple examples. I have about 5 of these, and we're going to label a lot of stuff. So, for example, let's start with the easy ones. I want to label the x-axis. Well, this is the x-axis. I'm going to write that here. Okay, I'm going to label let's scratch that out. I'm going to label the y-axis. Well, that's this one that goes up and down. So I'm going to call that the y-axis. Next, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and our slope. Well, for right now, I don't know because I have to graph my line still. So y equals mx plus b. Give you a hint, you already know your y-intercept because it's plus b. So the y-intercept is at the point x is 0, y is negative 2. And we know that because where is negative 2 on the y-axis? Well, that's right here. And guess where that point is? That's the point 0, negative 2. All right, next, using our slope, remember slope is 2 over 1. So that's going to be rise over run. So I'm going to rise 2, so go up 2, and run 1 to the right. There it is. And look what we just hit. This is our x-axis. We just found our x-intercept. That is what point? Well, that is the point 1, 0. All right, so now we know our y-intercept and our x-intercept. The only thing we do not know yet is slope. Oh, but wait, we do. It was right here. Remember, slope is m. Slope was 2. So our slope, if I can write that going this way, our slope is equal to 2. And that's it. So we've identified many key attributes of a linear function. And if you're saying that's it, that's what we're learning, the answer is yes. All right, so the next problem, let's do the same. We know this is the x-axis. We know this is the y-axis. And we're going to go ahead and let's solve for the x and y-intercept without graphing it. So the x-intercept means that y has to be 0. And the y-intercept means that x has to be 0. So check this out. Let's make y 0. 0 equals negative 3x plus 6. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. And now we have negative 6 equals negative 3x. I'm going to divide by negative 3. And x is, it's going to be positive 2. I already know where my x-intercept is. Y-intercept says make x 0. So let's do that. What's negative 3 times 0? Well, that's 0. Plus 6 is 6. If they want the slope, we already know the slope. Slope is in the problem. Slope is negative 3. So even without graphing, you can find all of your answers. We're going to graph it anyways. So here's our equation, just because I drew a lot of stuff around it. 6 is our first point on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There it is. Our slope is negative 3, also known as negative 3 over 1. Right? And just to refresh your memory about rise over run. How do you rise a negative number? Well, that means you're not rising up. You're actually going to rise a negative number, which means you're dropping down. So from our point, we should be dropping down 3 and right 1. So down 3 to the right 1. And there's our point. Notice that doesn't hit our x-intercept, but we could do it again. Go down 3, right 1. And look where we hit, exactly at 2, 0, like we predicted. The y-intercept is at 0, 6, like we predicted. The slope is negative. That's why the line drops going from left to right. It drops down because the slope is, and I'm going to write that here, the slope is negative 3. All right, next one. Y equals negative 1. We just talked about what that graph looks like. If you don't know, make some points. What do I know about the y? It's always negative 1. My x could be anything, like 1 and 2. 1, negative 1 is there. 2, negative 1 is there. So I have a horizontal line. And let's answer the question. We know this is the x-intercept. This is, the x-axis, bad language. X-axis, this is our y-axis. And, let me get a new pencil here. Now, let's find the other stuff. Well, we need to find the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and our slope. Well, what do we know about, sorry for writing tiny, our slope on a horizontal line? We can walk on it. We're not going up or down any. Remember the little man we drew earlier? There he is again. We can walk on it, so the slope is 0. The y-intercept, where does it cross the y-axis? Well, it crosses exactly right here, which is what point? Well, that's 0, -1. Remember, x is always 0. Your x-intercept, where does it cross the x-axis? Well, guess what? It will never. So there is none. There is no x-intercept. All right, moving on to x equals 3. You can predict it's the exact opposite. So x equals 3, again, make some points points. We know that x is going to be 3 all the time. Make up some y's like 1 and 2. So here is 3, 1 and 3, 2. All right, so I have a vertical line. And let's find some information about it. Like where's the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and our slope? Well, again, I'm going to go backwards. Where's our slope? If it's perfectly up and down, you can't walk on that. So it's undefined. The y-intercept, will it ever cross the y-axis? No. So there is none. And where does it cross the x-intercept? The x-intercept is right here, which is at the point 3, 0. Remember, your x-intercept, the y is always 0. All right, and we have one last one for the day. If I give you an equation in standard form, this is where we struggle. We need to graph it and find this great information. Always try to put it back into mx plus b. If we don't remember how, please remember. So what we're going to do is realize that x should be on the right side of the equal sign, and it's on the left. So let's fix that by getting rid of 3x by subtracting 3x from both sides. The most common mistake is this next step. We need to write -2y equals, and remember what it is, y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. Do not put those together and make it like 7 or something weird like that. It's mx plus b, so plus 10. The last step to get y by itself is this is -2 times y, so we get rid of that with division. So final answer, y equals, negative over negative is positive 3 over 2x, because that's not a pretty number. And 10 divided by -2 is -5. All right, so at this point, we know a few things. We know that we can find the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and the slope. And we know the slope right now. The slope is 3 over 2. We also know the y-intercept. Remember, y-intercept, what is 0? X is 0. And the y is -5. And the last part, if we want to find out where it crosses the x-axis, which is the trickiest one, y is 0. And so this one's going to be a little challenging. I don't even know if I want to get into it, but let's not and say we did. I lied. Might as well challenge you guys a little bit. So what we would do is we would make y 0. So let's do that. So my hand's in the way, sorry. 0 will be equal to 3 over 2x minus 5. You'll see why I didn't want to do this. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And now 5 equals 3 over 2x. So the final step is to get rid of this fraction by multiplying by the reciprocal. Notice how we flip that. So this all gives us x equals, and 2 times 5 is 10 divided by 3. So that's 10 over 3, which is about 3 1/3. So let's see how accurate our graph is. Let's do it. That's our answer. That's our x-intercept is 3 1/3, 0. Notice how we got the answer. It's ugly, but we got it. Now, let's graph it just for fun. So -5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going down. Your slope would be going up 3 over 2. So I'm going to go up 3 over 2. Sorry, my fat hand's in the way. Up 3 and over 2. I'm going to do it again. Up 1, 2, 3. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and over 2. All right, so if I draw a line, it's going to be, here we go, here we go, here we go. There it is. Check this out. X-intercept was at 1, 2, 3 and a smidgen, which is 3 1/3. Y-intercept is at 0, -5. Our slope is up 3 over 2. Up 3 over 2. And that's it, guys. So I wish you the best. Please remember to do your assignments and hope everything's going okay.